I used to believe that some people were just meant to walk through life alone. For 34 years, I built walls so high that even I couldn't see over them anymore. But sometimes, the family you need isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that chooses you, piece by piece, heart by heart, until one day you realize you're not alone anymore. My name is Maya, and for most of my adult life, I perfected the art of being invisible, not physically. I'm 5'6" with black hair that refuses to behave and a laugh that's too loud when I forget to contain it. No, I mean emotionally invisible. I learned early that caring too much, trusting too deeply, expecting too much from the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, well, that was a recipe for heartbreak. By the time I turned 34, I had my life exactly how I thought I wanted it. A small one-bedroom apartment in the quiet part of town where neighbors nodded politely but never lingered for conversation. A job at the insurance company where I processed claims with mechanical efficiency. Other people's disasters reduced to paperwork and check amounts. A routine so predictable that I could navigate my entire week without a single meaningful human interaction. I told myself this was peace. This was safety. This was what I deserved. The apartment was sparse but clean. A single coffee mug in the cupboard because I never had guests. One plate, one bowl, one set of silverware. The living room had a small couch facing a television that I kept on for noise rather than entertainment, and a bookshelf lined with romance novels. Stories about the kind of love I'd convinced myself existed only in fiction. Every morning at 6:30 I'd wake up to the same alarm. Shower, coffee, toast with peanut butter. Drive the same road to work, park in the same spot, spend 8 hours reviewing accident reports and medical bills. Drive home, microwave dinner, read until my eyes got heavy, sleep. Repeat. It wasn't living really. It was existing. But existing felt safer than the alternative. I'd tried the alternative once. In my early 20s, I'd opened my heart to someone I thought I could trust, let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have what other people seemed to have so effortlessly. That relationship lasted 2 years before I discovered he'd been living a completely different life with someone else the entire time. The betrayal didn't just hurt, it confirmed everything I'd learned growing up. People leave. People lie. People choose other people over you, and the sooner you accept that, the less it hurts when it happens. So I built my walls higher and made peace with solitude. The only crack in my carefully constructed isolation came on Tuesday evenings, when I volunteered at the community center downtown. It had started as court-ordered community service after a minor traffic violation 3 years earlier. But something about the place made me keep coming back, even after I'd fulfilled my obligation. Maybe it was because the community center felt like organized chaos, the opposite of my controlled life. Children ran through hallways while parents chased after them. Teenagers gathered in corners sharing secrets and dreams. Elderly folks played cards and argued about politics with the passion of people who still believed their opinions mattered. It was messy and loud and unpredictable, and somehow that felt like a relief from the silence of my apartment. I helped with small tasks, setting up chairs for meetings, sorting donations, occasionally manning the front desk when the regular volunteers couldn't make it. I was good at being helpful without being noticed, contributing without connecting. But that Tuesday evening in late October, everything changed. I was restacking chairs in the main room after a parenting class when I heard crying coming from the children's area. Not the dramatic wailing of a skinned knee or a toy dispute, but the quiet, heartbroken crying of someone who'd learned that sobbing too loudly brought unwanted attention. I found her sitting behind a bookshelf in the corner. A little girl who couldn't have been more than 8, with pigtails that had come loose and a dress that looked like it had seen better days. She was holding a picture book about families, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "Hey there," I said softly, crouching down to her level but keeping some distance. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me with eyes that seemed too old for her face. "My mama had to work late again. She said someone would come get me, but..." She gestured around the nearly empty center. "Everyone else got picked up." I looked at my watch. It was center officially closed at 8. "What's your name?" I asked. "Emma." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Emma Rodriguez. My mama's name is Sarah. She works at the diner on 5th Street. I knew I should call the center's emergency contact list or wait for one of the other volunteers to handle this. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. Instead, I found myself sitting down on the floor across from her. "Emma, that's a pretty name. I'm Maya. Can you tell me your mama's phone number?" She recited it carefully, the way children do when they've been taught something important. I called from my cell phone, and after 4 rings, a harried voice answered. Sarah Rodriguez. This is Maya from the community center. I'm here with Emma. Oh my God, Emma! I'm so sorry, I got stuck with a late table and my babysitter canceled and I thought my neighbor could pick her up but I'm coming right now. Is she okay? I'm the worst mother. She's fine, I interrupted gently. She's been very brave. We'll wait for you. While we waited, Emma showed me the book she'd been reading. It was about a little girl who lived with her grandmother, her aunt, her cousin, and 2 family dogs. Look, Emma said, pointing to the illustration. They're all together. Every night they have dinner and play games and no one has to work late. Something twisted in my chest. That sounds nice. Do you have a family like that? Emma asked with the directness that only children possess. I hesitated. The honest answer was no, I didn't have any family at all anymore. But looking at this little girl who was trying so hard not to cry, I found myself saying, I'm still figuring that out. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, rushing through the doors with her hair escaping from a ponytail and her waitress uniform wrinkled from a long shift. She was younger than me, probably late 20s, with kind eyes and the same heart-shaped face as her daughter. Emma, baby, I'm so sorry, she said, gathering her daughter into a fierce hug. Mama tried to get here sooner. It's okay, Mama. Maya stayed with me. We read books. Sarah looked at me over Emma's head, and I saw exhaustion there, but also gratitude. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if. Thank you. It's really no problem, I said, but even as I said it, I realized it wasn't entirely true. Something about sitting on that floor, reading with Emma, waiting for her mother, it had stirred something in me that I'd thought was safely buried. As they gathered Emma's backpack and headed for the door, Emma turned back to me. Will you be here next Tuesday, Maya? I should have said I wasn't sure, that it depended on my schedule. Instead, I nodded. I'll be here. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet community center, surrounded by stacked chairs and the lingering sounds of the day. For the first time in years, my carefully controlled world felt less like safety and more like prison. I drove home that night with Emma's question echoing in my mind. Do you have a family like that? The answer was no. But for the first time, I found myself wondering if it had to stay that way. The next week dragged by with unusual restlessness. I found myself checking the clock at work more often, my mind wandering from insurance claims to a little girl with pigtails, and a mother who worked double shifts to make ends meet. It was strange. I'd spent years perfecting the art of not thinking about people once they were out of sight, but Emma's face kept appearing in my quiet moments. Tuesday evening couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at the community center earlier than usual, telling myself it was just to get a head start on organizing the supply closet. But if I was being honest, and I was trying to be more honest with myself lately, I was looking for Emma. I found her in the same corner where we'd met the week before, but this time she wasn't alone. She was sitting with an elderly black man who was reading to her from a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. His voice was warm and rich, the kind that made you want to lean in closer to catch every word. And Wilbur was never lonely again. He finished, closing the book gently. Mr. David, will you read another chapter? Emma asked, bouncing slightly in her seat. Well now, little miss, I think that's enough for tonight. Your mama will be here soon, and she likes to hear about your day. That's when Emma spotted me hovering by the bookshelf, pretending to organize children's books that were already perfectly organized. Maya, she called out, scrambling to her feet. You came back? The elderly man, Mr. David, apparently, looked up at me with curious eyes. He had the kind of face that suggested he'd seen a lot of life and found most of it worth smiling about. So you're Maya, he said, standing with the careful movements of someone whose joints had earned their stiffness. Emma's told me all about you. I'm David Chen, no relation despite sharing your last name, I imagine. I blinked in surprise. Chen is my last name. His eyebrows rose. Well, how about that Chinese family? Half. My father was Chinese American. My mother was. I paused, realizing I hadn't talked about my parents in years. Irish, Italian. A good mix. I'm Chinese too, came here in the 60s. My wife used to say the best families are made from all kinds of ingredients. His smile faltered slightly. She passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Mr. David comes here every Tuesday and Thursday. He reads to all the kids, but he says I'm his best listener. That's because you ask the smartest questions, David said, ruffling her hair affectionately. I watched the easy interaction between them, and felt that same twisting sensation in my chest that I'd experienced the week before. There was something so natural about the way Emma gravitated toward this kind man, and the way he responded with gentle patience. Maya helped me last week when Mama was late, Emma explained to David. She waited with me and didn't make me feel stupid for crying. You weren't stupid for crying, I said automatically. Sometimes crying is exactly what we need to do. David gave me an appraising look. Wise words. Sarah arrived right on time that evening, looking slightly less frazzled than the week before. She greeted David with familiar warmth. Apparently, he'd been Emma's unofficial grandfather figure at the center for months. Maya, Sarah said, turning to me with a smile. Emma talked about you all week. Thank you again for last Tuesday. It was really nothing, I said, but Emma shook her head vigorously. It wasn't nothing, it was something. A big something. As they prepared to leave, David turned to me. Maya, would you mind helping me carry some books to my car? These old arms aren't what they used to be. I followed him outside, carrying a small stack of children's books to his ancient Honda Civic. Once we were alone, he turned to me with a directness that reminded me of Emma. That little girl thinks you hung the moon, he said quietly. She barely knows me. Sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes people recognize kindness even in small doses. He opened his trunk, which was filled with more children's books, small toys, and what looked like homemade snacks in plastic containers. I lost my granddaughter 5 years ago. Car accident. She was Emma's age. I stopped moving. David, I'm so sorry. He nodded, his eyes distant. May Lynn was her name. Beautiful little girl, smart as a whip. After she died, I didn't know what to do with all the love I'd saved up for her. My wife, she understood. She said love doesn't disappear just because the person does. It has to go somewhere. Is that why you volunteer here? Partly. But mostly I come because these children need what I have to give, and I need what they give back. It's not the same as having May Lynn, but it's, he paused, searching for the right words. It's family of a different kind. We finished loading the books in comfortable silence. As I turned to go back inside, David called my name. Maya. That little girl in there, she's been coming to the center for 3 months. Her mother works 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Emma's never had a babysitter stay past pickup time, never had someone choose to wait with her instead of just doing their job. You did something special last week, whether you realize it or not. Walking back into the community center, I felt like something fundamental had shifted. The building looked the same cheerful chaos, same mismatched furniture, same bulletin boards covered with announcements for everything from senior yoga to teen job training. But I was seeing it differently. I was seeing the connections. The teenager helping a younger child with homework wasn't just killing time. He was being a big brother to someone who might not have one. The group of elderly women planning a potluck weren't just organizing a meal. They were creating family dinner for people who might otherwise eat alone. The harried mother dropping off her kids for after-school care wasn't just using a service. She was trusting her most precious possessions to a community that would love them in her absence. For the first time, I understood what David meant about family of a different kind. Over the next few weeks, my Tuesday routine evolved. Instead of arriving exactly on time and leaving as soon as my tasks were complete, I found myself getting there early and staying late. I started bringing books for Emma, ones I remembered loving at her age, stories about brave girls and magical adventures and families that came together in unexpected ways. Emma would light up when she saw me, running over with updates about school, complaints about vegetables, and questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether I thought dogs dreamed. I found myself looking forward to these conversations in ways that surprised me. Sarah and I began talking too, tentative conversations that started with Emma but gradually expanded to other topics. She told me about the diner where she worked, about her dreams of going back to school someday, about the father who'd left when Emma was 2 and never looked back. Some days I feel like I'm failing her. Sarah confided one evening as we watched Emma and David work on a puzzle together. She deserves so much more than a mama who's always tired, always working, always stressed about money. She deserves exactly what she has, I said firmly. A mother who loves her enough to work multiple jobs, who makes sure she's safe and cared for, who raises her to be kind and smart and funny. Emma knows she's loved, Sarah. That's not failing. That's everything. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for saying that. I'm saying it because it's true. And it was true. Watching Sarah with Emma, I saw a kind of fierce, protective love that I barely remembered from my own childhood. Sarah might have been exhausted and overwhelmed, but she was present. She listened when Emma talked, celebrated small victories, provided comfort during disappointments. She was everything a mother should be. It was David who first suggested that the three of us, four, counting Emma, grab dinner together after one particularly long evening at the center. There's a little Chinese place around the corner, he said. Nothing fancy, but the owner makes dumplings that would make my late wife weep with joy. My treat. I should have declined. Dinner was getting too close to friendship, and friendship was getting too close to caring, and caring was the first step toward inevitable disappointment. But Emma was already clapping her hands with excitement, and Sarah was looking at me hopefully, and David was smiling with the kind of warmth that made refusal seem impossible. Okay, I heard myself say. But next time I'm buying. The words were out before I realized what they implied, that there would be a next time, that I was planning for a future that included these people. That maybe, just maybe, I was ready to stop running from the possibility of connection. The little Chinese restaurant David had chosen was the kind of place I would have walked past without a second glance. Narrow storefront, faded sign, mismatched chairs around small round tables. But the moment we stepped inside, I understood why David had brought us there. The owner, a woman about David's age, greeted him like family. David, you bring friends tonight? Or Mrs. Wang, I'd like you to meet Sarah and Emma, and this is Maya. Ladies, Mrs. Wang makes the best dumplings in the city. Ah, you flatter an old woman, Mrs. Wang said, but she was beaming. You sit, you sit. I bring you the good stuff. Emma was enchanted by everything. The red lanterns hanging from the ceiling, the lucky bamboo plant by the window, the way Mrs. Wang fussed over her and brought her jasmine tea in a tiny cup that made her feel grown up. Mr. David, Emma said after Mrs. Wang had disappeared into the kitchen. How do you know everyone? David chuckled. When you've lived in a place long enough, little one, you start to realize that the whole city is just a big neighborhood. Mrs. Wang's grandson used to come to the community center when he was about your age. Her daughter brings her grandchildren there now. It's all connected. Like a spider web. Emma said thoughtfully. Exactly like a spider web. As we waited for our food, the conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected. David told stories about his years working as an engineer, about the projects he'd built and the places he'd traveled. Sarah talked about her dreams of opening her own restaurant someday, about the recipes she'd learned from her grandmother back in Mexico. What about you, Maya? Sarah asked. What did you want to be when you were Emma's age? It was such a simple question, but it stopped me cold. I couldn't remember the last time someone had asked me about my dreams, past or present. At my insurance job, conversations stayed safely professional. In my apartment, there was no one to ask. I started, then paused. I wanted to be a librarian. A librarian? Emma bounced in her seat. That's so cool. You could read all the books you wanted. Why didn't you? David asked gently. The honest answer was complicated. I'd started college with that dream, had even gotten halfway through a library science program. But when my life fell apart in my early 20s, when the relationship I'd thought was real turned out to be a lie, when I realized how completely I'd been betrayed, I dropped out and taken the first stable job I could find. Safety had become more important than dreams. Life got in the way, I said finally. David nodded knowingly. Life has a way of doing that, but dreams don't disappear just because we set them aside for a while. Mrs. Wang arrived with platters of steamed dumplings, fried rice, and sweet and sour pork, along with a bowl of wonton soup that she placed specifically in front of Emma, for the little princess, she said with a wink. The food was incredible, but what struck me more was the feeling around the table. The easy laughter when Emma tried to use chopsticks and ended up wearing more sauce than she ate, the way Sarah's shoulders relaxed for the first time since I'd known her, as if she was finally allowed to just be a person instead of constantly being, as a working mother. The gentle way David told stories that made all of us laugh. It felt like family dinner. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it made me want to hold on to the moment forever. After dinner, David insisted on driving Sarah and Emma home while I followed in my car. Their apartment was only a few blocks from mine. As it turned out, we discovered we'd been neighbors for months without knowing it. Maya, Sarah said as we stood outside her building. Would you maybe want to come up for coffee? Emma's been asking if she could show you her room. Every instinct told me to decline politely. I'd already pushed my comfort zone far enough for one evening. But Emma was looking at me with hopeful eyes, and David was smiling encouragingly, and something about the warm feeling in my chest made me nod. Sarah's apartment was small but cozy, filled with Emma's artwork and photos of the two of them together. There were signs of their financial struggles. Furniture that had seen better days, a TV that was definitely from another decade. But there were also signs of love everywhere, books stacked carefully on makeshift shelves. A bulletin board covered with Emma's school papers, each one marked with encouraging notes from Sarah. A small herb garden growing in repurposed containers on the windowsill. Emma gave me the full tour, showing me her room with pride. It was tiny, barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser, but she'd made it her own with glow, in the dark stars on the ceiling and drawings taped to every available wall surface. "This is my favorite," she said, pointing to a crayon drawing of stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "It's my family." I looked closer. There were 4 figures, one labeled Mama, one labeled Emma, one labeled Mr. David, and one labeled Maya. My throat tightened. "Emma, this is beautiful, but I'm not really your family." "Yes, you are," she said matter-of-factly. "Family is people who choose to love you. Mr. David told me that. And you chose to wait with me, and you chose to read to me, and you chose to come to dinner with us. That's choosing to love." Out of the mouths of babes. When I rejoined the adults in the living room, Sarah was making coffee while David examined the photos on her bookshelf. "Beautiful family," he said, indicating a picture of Sarah and Emma at what looked like a beach. "Just the 2 of us," Sarah said with a smile that didn't quite hide the wariness behind it. "But we make it work." "The best families aren't always the biggest ones," David replied. "Sometimes they're just the right ones." As the evening wound down, I found myself reluctant to leave. This small apartment felt warmer and more alive than my own place had ever felt. There was something magical about the easy conversation, the way we all seemed to fit together naturally. But eventually, I had to go. I hugged Emma goodnight. When had I become someone who hugged children, and thanked Sarah for dinner? David walked me to my car. "So," he said with a knowing smile, "how are you feeling about all this?" "Oh, what?" "Maya, I've been around long enough to recognize someone who's spent a lot of time alone. And I've been around long enough to recognize when someone is ready to stop being alone, even if they don't realize it yet." I leaned against my car, looking up at the stars that were barely visible through the city's glow. "It's terrifying," I admitted. "Good things usually are. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not enough? What if they realize I don't know how to be part of a family?" David was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something my wife used to say?" I nodded. "She used to tell me that love isn't something you have to earn or prove you deserve. Love is something you practice. Every small kindness, every moment you choose to show up, every time you put someone else's happiness alongside your own, that's practicing love. And the beautiful thing about practice is that you get better at it the more you do it." "But what if, Maya?" he said gently. "What if it works out?" The question hung in the air between us. What if it worked out? What if these people who seemed to care about me continued to care about me? What if Emma's drawing of our little family wasn't just childhood imagination but prophecy? What if I was allowed to have this? "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "None of us do, sweetheart. That's why we do it together." Driving home that night, I found myself taking the long way, not ready for the evening to end. My apartment felt smaller and quieter than usual when I finally walked through the door. For the first time, instead of feeling safe in my solitude, I felt lonely. I looked around at my carefully controlled space, one of everything, no clutter, no signs of other people's presence. It had felt like peace for so long. Now it just felt empty. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick to work the next day. Not because I was ill, but because I needed time to think, to process what was happening to me. I spent the morning walking through the city, really seeing it for the first time in years. I noticed things I'd been blind to before: the way strangers helped each other with heavy doors, the community garden where neighbors worked side by side, the playground where children of all ages played together while their parents chatted on benches. David was right. The whole city was just a big neighborhood, full of connections I'd trained myself not to see. By evening, I'd made a decision. It was time to stop being afraid of wanting more from my life. It was time to let myself hope. The following Tuesday at the community center felt different. I arrived with a small gift bag in my hands. A book I'd found at a used bookstore over the weekend, The Secret Garden, by Frances Hodgson Burnett, about a lonely girl who finds healing and family in the most unexpected places. It felt appropriate. Emma spotted me the moment I walked through the door and came running over, her face lighting up like I'd just returned from a long journey instead of being gone for less than a week. Maya, guess what? Mama said maybe you could come to my school play next Friday." I'm a flower in the garden scene and I have 3 whole lines to say. The invitation caught me off guard. A school play felt so parental, so involved. So much like something a real family member would attend. If you're free, of course, Sarah added quickly, appearing behind Emma with that apologetic smile I was learning meant she was worried about asking for too much. I know it's probably not very exciting, watching a bunch of 8-year-olds stumble through. I'd love to come. I interrupted, surprised by how much I meant it. Emma cheered and threw her arms around my waist. Over her head, Sarah mouthed, "Thank you," with tears in her eyes. It was such a small thing, agreeing to attend a school play. But it felt monumental. It felt like stepping across a line I'd drawn years ago between myself and the rest of the world. That evening, David and I worked together organizing donated books, while Emma did her homework at a nearby table. It was becoming our routine, the three of us finding comfortable ways to be together, while Emma focused on schoolwork and Sarah finished her shift at the diner. "So," David said quietly, "Sarah mentioned you're coming to the play. Word travels fast around here." He chuckled, "Small community. But I think it's wonderful. Emma's been talking about it for weeks, practicing her lines for anyone who'll listen. Having you there will mean the world to her." "It's just a school play." "No," David said, pausing in his book sorting to look at me directly. "It's not just a school play. It's Emma sharing something important with someone she loves. It's you being part of her big moments. It's what families do." There was that word again. Family. It was starting to feel less foreign each time I heard it in connection with myself. "David, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you know when you can trust someone, really trust them?" He set down the book he was holding and gave me his full attention. "That's a big question. What's prompting it?" I glanced over at Emma, who was chewing on the end of her pencil as she worked through a math problem. "I care about them, about Emma and Sarah, more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. But caring about people means they can hurt you, and I'm not sure I'm brave enough for that." David nodded slowly. "You know, after my wife died, I thought I was done. Done caring that much, done letting anyone matter that much. The pain of losing her felt like it might kill me. I couldn't imagine ever opening my heart like that again. What changed? Oh, Emma, actually, and Sarah, and this place." He gestured around the community center. I realized I had a choice. I could protect myself from ever being hurt again by staying closed off, or I could honor my wife's memory by continuing to love even if it meant risking pain. "Weren't you terrified?" "Absolutely. But you know what scared me more? The thought of living the rest of my life without love in it. Fear is a terrible way to make decisions. Maya, that weekend, I found myself doing something unprecedented. I went shopping for Emma's play. Not just showing up, but really preparing. I bought a small bouquet of flowers and a card. I picked out a nice dress to wear. I even looked up the plot of the play online so I'd understand the story. As I stood in front of my mirror Friday evening, getting ready to leave for the school, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different. There was an lightness in my chest, an anticipation that I hadn't experienced in years. I was excited to be part of someone else's special moment. The elementary school auditorium was packed with parents, grandparents, and siblings, all armed with cameras and proud smiles. I found Sarah in the third row. She'd saved me a seat between her and David, who had arrived with his own bouquet, and the kind of grandfatherly pride that made my heart squeeze. "I can't believe how nervous I am," Sarah whispered as the lights dimmed. "It's just a school play, but I feel like I'm about to watch Emma perform at Carnegie Hall." "That's what love does," David murmured. "Makes everything feel important because it matters to them." When the curtain opened, revealing a garden scene made of painted cardboard and crepe paper flowers, I felt tears prick my eyes before Emma even appeared on stage. There was something so pure about children putting their whole hearts into a performance. About the audience full of people who loved them unconditionally. Emma appeared in the second scene, wearing a green dress with felt petals sewn around the hem and a headband adorned with paper flowers. She was one of 6 children playing various garden plants, and when her moment came to deliver her lines about growing strong in the sunshine, her voice carried clear and proud across the auditorium. "That's my girl," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. And in that moment, sitting between Sarah and David, watching Emma beam with pride on that makeshift stage, I felt something I hadn't experienced since childhood. I felt like I belonged somewhere. After the play, we made our way backstage to find Emma, who launched herself into Sarah's arms first, then David's, and finally mine. "Did you see me, Maya? Did you see my part? You were absolutely perfect," I told her, meaning every word. "You were the most beautiful flower in the whole garden. I was so nervous, but then I saw you all watching and I felt brave." As we walked to the parking lot, Emma between Sarah and me, David slightly ahead, I felt like we looked like what we were becoming, a family. Not a traditional one maybe, but a real one nonetheless. Ice cream to celebrate, David suggested. Yes, Emma cheered. We ended up at a small ice cream parlor near the school, Emma still in her flower costume, all of us giddy with the success of the evening. Emma regaled us with behind the scenes drama from the play. Who forgot their lines, who tripped during the dancing scene, how the boy playing the son got stage fright and cried until the teacher convinced him he was the most important part of the whole show. It was perfect. It was everything I never knew I wanted. And then my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in over 2 years but still recognized instantly. My stomach dropped. "Excuse me," I said, stepping away from the table. "I need to take this." I walked outside the ice cream parlor before answering, my hands already shaking. "Maya, oh my God, Maya, is this still your number?" The voice belonged to Jessica, my former best friend. The best friend who had known about my boyfriend's other relationship and chosen to say nothing. The best friend who had been part of the web of lies that had shattered my faith in people. "What do you want, Jessica?" "Maya, please don't hang up. I know you hate me, and you have every right to, but I need to talk to you. Something's happened." Every protective instinct I'd developed over the years screamed at me to end the call. Nothing good could come from reopening this door. "I can't do this right now," I said. "Please. I know I don't deserve your time, but my mom is sick, Maya, really sick, and she's been asking for you. She always loved you, you know that. She said you were like a daughter to her." The words hit me like a physical blow. Mrs. Patterson had been like a second mother to me during high school and college. She'd been the one to encourage my library science dreams, the one who'd celebrated my successes and comforted me during failures. She'd also been the one whose betrayal had cut the deepest when I discovered she'd known about the lies too. "I have to go," I said. "Maya, wait." I ended the call and stood in the parking lot, breathing hard. Through the ice cream parlor window, I could see Emma showing David how she could balance her spoon on her nose while Sarah laughed and took pictures. They looked so happy, so normal, so much like the kind of family I was just beginning to believe I could be part of. And here was my past, crashing into my present like a freight train, reminding me of every reason I'd learned not to trust, not to hope, not to let people close enough to hurt me. I should go back inside. I should sit down with these people who cared about me and finish celebrating Emma's special night. I should push Jessica's call out of my mind and focus on the good things that were happening right now. Instead, I found myself walking to my car. Instead, I drove home alone, leaving behind the people who had become my chosen family, because the scared part of me, the part that had been hurt and betrayed and abandoned, was louder than the part that had been learning to love again. By the time I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Sarah and 2 text messages asking if I was okay, if something had happened. I turned off my phone without responding. Some walls, it turned out, were easier to rebuild than others. I spent the weekend in my apartment like a wounded animal retreating to its den. I turned off my phone, closed the blinds, and tried to pretend that Friday night hadn't happened. Tried to pretend that I hadn't walked away from Emma's celebration, hadn't abandoned the people who cared about me the moment my past came calling. But pretending was harder than it used to be. My apartment felt suffocating now. The silence that had once comforted me felt oppressive. The careful emptiness that had once felt safe now felt like punishment. I kept catching myself looking toward the door, expecting Emma to come bouncing in with a story about her day, or Sarah to call with some small crisis that needed solving, or David to show up with books and wisdom and that gentle way he had of making everything seem manageable. By Sunday night, I couldn't stand it anymore. I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls. 23 text messages. My heart lurched as I scrawled through them. "Sarah, Maya, are you okay? Did something happen? Sarah, Emma keeps asking where you went. She's worried she did something wrong. Sarah, please just let us know you're safe. David, whatever is happening, you don't have to face it alone. David, we're here when you're ready." Emma's dictated through Sarah's phone. "Maya, I saved you a piece of my celebration ice cream. It's in our freezer waiting for you." And then, the one that broke me, "Sarah, I don't know what we did wrong, but I'm sorry." Emma cried herself to sleep asking if you were coming back. I told her you were, but honestly, I don't know what to tell her anymore. She loves you, Maya. We all do. But I can't keep explaining to my daughter why people disappear. I sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest, releasing years of loneliness and fear and self-imposed isolation. I cried for the scared woman I'd been, for the family I'd abandoned, for the little girl who had saved me ice cream and didn't understand why love wasn't enough to make people stay. When I was finally empty of tears, I did something I hadn't done since I was Emma's age. I called someone for help. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. David? Maya, thank God! Are you all right? No, I whispered. I'm not all right, and I don't know how to fix it. There was a pause and then, what's your address? I'm coming over. 30 minutes later, David stood in my doorway with a thermos of tea and the kind of patient expression that made me believe he would wait as long as it took for me to find the words. My apartment looked even smaller with another person in it. David settled himself on my couch, the first guest I'd had in over 2 years, and waited while I gathered the courage to explain. Someone from my past called Friday night, I began haltingly. Someone who hurt me very badly, and all I could think about was how much it would hurt if you and Sarah and Emma did the same thing. So I ran. David nodded, encouraging me to continue. I had a best friend in college. Jessica. We were inseparable, or so I thought. I was dating this guy Marcus for 2 years. I thought we were serious. I thought we might even get married someday. But he was living with another woman the entire time. Had been for 3 years. They were engaged. Oh, Maya. The worst part wasn't even that he lied to me. The worst part was that Jessica knew. She'd known for months, and she never said anything. She let me plan a future with someone who was planning a future with someone else. When I found out, I confronted her, and she said she didn't want to be the one to hurt me. She said she was protecting me. I laughed bitterly. Protecting me by letting me live in a fantasy while everyone around me knew the truth. When I cut contact with both of them, I realized that other people had known too. His friends, some of my friends, even Mrs. Patterson, Jessica's mother, who I'd thought of as family. They'd all decided that keeping his secret was more important than my right to know the truth about my own life. David was quiet for a long moment. That's a profound betrayal, he said finally, not just from one person but from an entire community of people you trusted. After that, I decided it was safer to not trust anyone at all. And it worked, David. It worked for over 10 years. I was safe, I was in control, I was alone, yes, but alone felt better than betrayed. And then Emma wandered into your life. I nodded, feeling fresh tears threaten. And Sarah and you and this whole beautiful, messy, complicated thing that I never thought I could have. I was starting to believe that maybe I could do this, maybe I could be part of a family. And then Jessica called and it all came crashing back. What did she want? Her mother is sick, dying maybe, and Mrs. Patterson has been asking for me. I wiped my eyes. The woman who helped raise me, who encouraged my dreams, who I loved like a mother, and who lied to my face for months while I was being betrayed by the person I thought I was going to marry. David leaned forward in his chair. Maya, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think Sarah would lie to you? The question caught me off guard. I know. Sarah's not capable of that kind of deception. Do you think I would betray your trust? No, I said without hesitation. Do you think Emma would ever deliberately hurt you? Of course not. But David, that's not the point. I thought the same thing about Jessica and Mrs. Patterson and even Marcus. At first, I thought they cared about me. And maybe they did care about you, in their own flawed way. Maybe they made terrible decisions while trying to do what they thought was right. Maybe they were cowards who prioritized their own comfort over your well-being. People are complicated, Maya. They can love you and still fail you. I stared at him. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. But it also doesn't mean that everyone will fail you the same way. He stood up and moved to my kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. You know what I learned after my wife died? That there are 2 kinds of people in this world. There are people who will disappoint you, hurt you, let you down. And there are people who will disappoint you, hurt you, let you down, and then show up the next day ready to try again. The first kind you learn from and let go. The second kind you fight for. How do you tell the difference? You pay attention to their actions over time, not just their words in a moment. You look at how they treat people who can't do anything for them. You watch how they handle their own mistakes. He turned back to me. Sarah works 2 jobs to give Emma a good life. When she's late picking up her daughter, she feels terrible and apologizes even though it's not really her fault. When Emma needs something, Sarah finds a way to provide it, even if it means sacrificing for herself. And you read to children who aren't your grandchildren, because you believe love shouldn't disappear when the person does. Exactly. and Emma saved you ice cream. Maya, a child who has every reason to be selfish and demanding, saved you ice cream because she was thinking about your feelings. I felt something shift inside my chest, a loosening of the tight knot of fear that had been choking me all weekend. I hurt them, I whispered. Yes, you did. But hurt can be repaired if both sides are willing to do the work. What if they don't forgive me? What if they do? There it was again, David's gentle way of reframing fear into hope. What if they do forgive me? What if I could explain why I ran? What if love was stronger than one moment of panic? I'm scared, I admitted. Good. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't matter enough. The bravest people I know are the ones who feel fear and choose love anyway. I looked around my apartment, my safe, controlled, empty apartment, and made a decision. Will you drive me to Sarah's? I need to apologize, and I need to do it in person. David smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. 20 minutes later, we stood outside Sarah's apartment building. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Later than I should be, showing up unannounced, but I couldn't wait another minute. Sarah answered the door in pajamas, her hair in a messy bun, her eyes puffy like she'd been crying. When she saw me, her expression cycled through surprise, relief, and something that might have been anger. Maya? I'm sorry, I said immediately. I'm so sorry. I know I should have called. I know I disappeared without explanation. I know I hurt you and Emma, and I'm here to make it right if you'll let me. She stared at me for a long moment, then stepped back to let me in. Emma was curled up on the couch in her pajamas, watching a cartoon. When she saw me, she launched herself into my arms without hesitation. Maya, you came back! I knew you would come back. Her complete, uncomplicated forgiveness almost undid me. I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small arms squeeze my neck. I'm sorry I left, sweetheart. I got scared about something that had nothing to do with you, and I made a bad choice. It's okay, she said simply. Everyone makes bad choices sometimes. Mama says what matters is that you try to fix them. Over Emma's head, I met Sarah's eyes. She was still guarded, still hurt, but she was listening. Can we talk? I asked. She nodded toward the kitchen, and David offered to stay with Emma while we sorted things out. In the small kitchen, surrounded by Emma's artwork and the herbs Sarah grew on the windowsill, I told her everything, about Marcus and Jessica and Mrs. Patterson, about the walls I'd built and why, about the phone call that had triggered every old fear and sent me running back to the safety of isolation. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression softening as I talked. I understand why you ran, she said finally. But Maya, you can't keep running every time something scares you. Not if you want to be part of our lives. I know. I don't want to run anymore. I want to be here, with you and Emma and David. I want to be part of this family we're building. But I'm still learning how to do this, and I'm probably going to mess up again. We're all learning, Sarah said quietly. Do you think single motherhood came with a manual? Do you think I don't make mistakes every single day? Do you think David doesn't sometimes struggle with letting new people into his heart after losing his wife? I hadn't thought about it that way, that maybe all of us were fumbling toward love, doing our best with broken parts and scared hearts. I promise I'll talk to you next time instead of disappearing. I promise I'll fight for this instead of running away. And I promise that when I mess up again, because I probably will, I'll show up the next day ready to try again. Sarah smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. David said something like that once. About the kind of people worth fighting for. Smart man. The smartest. Now come on, let's go rescue him from Emma's bedtime negotiations. She's probably convinced him to let her stay up until midnight. We returned to the living room to find David reading Emma a story, both of them looking perfectly content. This, I thought, was what family looked like. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and loving and worth every risk. As I tucked Emma into bed later, she looked up at me with serious eyes. Maya, are you going to stay this time? I'm going to try very hard to stay, sweetheart, not just tonight, but for all the nights and days to come. Good, she said sleepily, because I love you, and families don't give up on each other. Out of the mouths of babes indeed. 3 weeks after my return to the fold, life had settled into a new rhythm. I'd started coming to the community center, not just on Tuesdays, but on Thursdays too. Sarah had begun calling me when she needed someone to pick up Emma from school on days when her shifts ran long. David and I had developed a tradition of Saturday morning coffee at the little cafe near his apartment, where we'd discuss books and life and the small miracles of chosen family. I was learning what it meant to be reliable for other people, and they were learning they could count on me. But the real test came on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. I was helping Emma with her math homework at the community center. When Sarah's phone rang, I watched her face change as she listened to whoever was on the other end, watched the color drain from her cheeks and her free hand grip the edge of the table. "Yes, I understand," she said finally. "I'll be right there." She hung up and just sat there for a moment, staring at the phone. "Mama." Emma looked up from her multiplication tables. "What's wrong?" "That was the hospital baby. Abuela Maria had a fall. She's okay," Sarah added quickly, seeing Emma's face crumple, "but she broke her hip and she needs surgery." Abuela Maria was Sarah's grandmother, the woman who had raised Sarah after her own parents died when she was Emma's age. She lived in Phoenix, alone and stubbornly independent at 87 years old. Sarah had been trying to convince her to move closer for years, but Maria insisted she was fine managing on her own. "I have to go to Phoenix," Sarah said, more to herself than to us. "I have to be there for the surgery, help her with recovery. But I can't afford to miss work, and I can't take Emma out of school, and I don't have anyone who can. I'll take care of Emma," I said without thinking. Sarah blinked at me. "What? I'll take care of Emma. However long you need to be gone, I'll make sure she's okay?" "Maya, that's too much to ask. You have your job, your life. I have vacation days I've never used. Emma can stay at my place, or I can stay here, whatever works better. David can help, we'll figure it out." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? I could stay with you and Mr. David." "Hold on," Sarah said, holding up her hands. "Maya, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. This is what families do, right? We show up for each other." The word came out so naturally, families. It still gave me a small thrill every time I said it without fear. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." 2 days later, I found myself in completely uncharted territory, being responsible for another human being's child. Sarah had caught a red-eye flight to Phoenix after giving me detailed instructions about Emma's routine, emergency contacts, and approximately 17 different scenarios that might arise. Her bedtime is 8:30, but she'll try to negotiate for 9, Sarah had said, running around the apartment gathering things. She likes her peanut butter sandwiches cut diagonally, not straight across. She's afraid of thunder, so if it storms, she might want to sleep in your room. She has a doctor's appointment on Friday at 3. Just a regular checkup, but the forms are in the blue folder on my dresser. "Sarah, breathe," I'd said, catching her hands. "Emma and I are going to be fine. David's going to help. The community center knows what's happening. You just focus on taking care of your grandmother." Now, 24 hours into my first real parenting experience, I was discovering that caring for an 8-year-old was simultaneously the most rewarding and most exhausting thing I'd ever done. Emma woke up at 6 in the morning, chattering immediately about her dreams and her plans for the day. She required constant negotiation about everything from what to wear to school to how many vegetables constituted enough at dinner. She asked approximately 400 questions between breakfast and bedtime, ranging from "Why is the sky blue?" to "Do you think dogs have favorite colors?" She was also funny and kind and surprisingly wise, offering comfort when I burned dinner and matter of factly explaining that everyone makes mistakes when they're learning new jobs. "I's taking care of me a new job for you?" she asked on Thursday evening, as we worked on her homework together at my kitchen table. "Yes," I said honestly. "But it's the best job I've ever had. You're doing good at it. Mama would be proud." The casual confidence in her voice made my throat tight. Emma had such faith in the adults in her life, such certainty that we would take care of her and each other. I was determined to prove worthy of that trust. Friday brought its first real challenge. Emma woke up with a fever. I called in sick to work and spent the morning alternating between taking her temperature, offering ice chips, and calling David for moral support. Emma was miserable, hot and cranky and wanting her mother with the desperate need of a sick child. "I want Mama," she whimpered, curled up on my couch with 3 different blankets and her favorite stuffed elephant. "I know, sweetheart. She wants to be here too. Can you call her?" I did, putting the phone on speaker so Emma could talk to Sarah. Just hearing her mother's voice seemed to help Emma relax. "How's Abuela?" Emma asked. "She's doing better, baby. Surgery went well, and she's being her usual stubborn self, trying to get out of bed before the doctors say she can. She sends you love and says to be good for Maya." "I am being good. Maya's taking really good care of me. She made me special sick person soup. Campbell's chicken noodle from a can." I mouthed to the phone, making Sarah laugh despite her worry. "That sounds perfect. Maya, how are you holding up?" "We're managing," I said, smoothing Emma's hair back from her feverish forehead. "When do you think you'll be able to come home?" Maybe Sunday. Maria's going to need more help than I thought, but I'm trying to arrange for a home health aide to come in during the day. I hate being so far away when Emma's sick. She's in good hands, I promised. And David's coming over later with real soup and probably half the children's section from the library. After we hung up, Emma curled closer to me on the couch. Maya? Yes, sweetheart? Are you scared? Taking care of me by yourself? I considered lying, giving her the confident adult answer that would make her feel secure. Instead, I decided on honesty. A little bit. I've never taken care of anyone but myself before. But you know what's not scary? What? How much I love you. That makes everything else feel manageable. Emma smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her all day. I love you too. Even when I'm cranky and sick. Especially when you're cranky and sick, that's when love matters most. David arrived that evening with homemade chicken soup, a stack of picture books, and the kind of grandfatherly wisdom that made everything seem less overwhelming. How's our patient? He asked, settling into the chair next to the couch where Emma was wrapped in her blanket fortress. Better now that you're here, Emma said. Maya was worried about me. Good worrying or bad worrying? David asked. Good worrying, the kind that means she loves me. David caught my eye over Emma's head and smiled. The best kind of worrying there is. That night, after Emma's fever had broken and she was sleeping peacefully in my bed while I took the couch, I found myself thinking about how much my life had changed. 6 months ago, the idea of being responsible for a child would have sent me into a panic. The thought of someone depending on me, needing me, trusting me with their most precious person. It would have been unthinkable. Now, listening to Emma's quiet breathing from the other room, I felt something I'd never experienced before, the deep satisfaction of being needed and trusted, and loved not despite my flaws, but including them. Saturday morning brought a phone call that changed everything again. Maya? It was Jessica's voice, and I almost hung up immediately. I'd been ignoring her calls for weeks. What do you want, Jessica? She died, Maya. Mom died this morning. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mrs. Patterson, the woman who had been like a mother to me, who I'd loved and felt betrayed by in equal measure, was gone. I know you hate us. Jessica continued, her voice thick with tears. I know you have every right to never speak to either of us again. But she loved you, Maya. Right up to the end, she kept asking if I'd heard from you, if you were happy, if you were okay. She wanted to apologize. I sat down heavily at my kitchen table, trying to process the news. The funeral is Tuesday, Jessica said. I'm not asking you to come for me. But if there's any part of you that still loved her, despite what we did, she would want you there. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, wrestling with grief and regret and the complicated pain of loving someone who had hurt you. Emma appeared in the doorway, looking much better but still moving carefully. Who was that? She asked, climbing into my lap with the casual familiarity of a child who knew she was welcome there. Someone from my past. Remember I told you about the people who hurt me a long time ago? Emma nodded. Well, one of their mothers just died. She was someone I loved very much, even though she made some bad choices. Are you sad? Yes, I think I am. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this. Are you going to go say goodbye to her? I don't know. It's complicated. A mama says when something is complicated, you should think about what would make your heart feel most peaceful. Out of the mouths of babes again. I spent the weekend thinking about Mrs. Patterson, about the woman who had encouraged my dreams and celebrated my successes and made terrible choices that hurt me deeply. I thought about forgiveness and closure and the difference between loving someone and excusing their behavior. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. Sarah returned Sunday evening, tired but relieved that her grandmother was recovering well. She found Emma and me making dinner together, both of us covered in flour from our ambitious attempt at homemade pizza. How did it go? She asked, sweeping Emma into a fierce hug. Maya took really good care of me, Emma announced. She made me soup when I was sick and let me sleep in her bed and didn't get mad even when I was cranky. And Emma taught me that taking care of someone you love isn't scary. It's a privilege, I added, meaning every word. Sarah hugged me too, tears in her eyes. Thank you. I can never repay you for this. You don't have to repay me. This is what we do. That night, after Emma was settled back in her own bed and Sarah was catching up on a week's worth of mail, I told her about Mrs. Patterson's death and my decision to attend the funeral. I think I need to go, I said. Not for Jessica, not even for Mrs. Patterson really. For me, to put that part of my past to rest. Do you want company? Sarah asked. I could come with you. The offer surprised me. You barely know the story. I know enough. I know someone you loved died, and you're struggling with complicated feelings about it. I know you shouldn't have to face something like that alone. What about Emma? What about work? David already offered to watch Emma. And my boss owes me about 50 favors. Say yes, Maya. Let me be there for you the way you were there for me. So on Tuesday morning, Sarah and I drove 3 hours to attend the funeral of a woman who had helped shape me and betrayed me and loved me imperfectly but genuinely. The service was small, held in the little church where Mrs. Patterson had worshipped for 40 years. I sat in the back with Sarah, listening to stories about the woman I'd known and loved, stories that reminded me why I'd cared about her so much. After the service, Jessica approached me hesitantly. Maya, I can't believe you came. I came for her, not for you. Jessica nodded, accepting that. She really did love you. And she was sorry. She wrote you a letter, actually, before she got too sick. I have it if you want it. I took the letter but didn't read it there. Some things needed privacy, time, space to be processed properly. On the drive home, Sarah asked if I was okay. I think I will be, I said honestly. It feels good to have said goodbye, and it feels good to know that I can face painful things now without running away. You're not the same person who disappeared from the ice cream parlor 6 weeks ago. No, I'm not. That person was so afraid of being hurt that she was willing to hurt everyone else first. This person chooses love, even when it's scary. Even when it's guaranteed to be messy and complicated and sometimes painful. Especially then. When we got back to town that evening, David and Emma were waiting for us at my apartment with takeout Chinese food and a hand-drawn welcome home sign. How did it go? David asked gently. It went exactly how it needed to go, I said, gathering Emma into a hug. And now I'm ready to be fully present for the family I have instead of being haunted by the family I lost. Later that night, after Sarah and Emma had gone home and David had left with promises to call tomorrow, I finally read Mrs. Patterson's letter. It was an apology, full and honest and heartbreaking. She explained her choices, owned her mistakes, and expressed her regret for the pain she'd caused. She also told me how proud she was of the woman I'd become, and how much she'd hoped I would find the love and happiness I deserved. I cried reading it, but they were good tears. Tears of closure, of forgiveness, of letting go. The next morning, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I called my boss and requested a meeting to discuss changing my career path. It was time to stop playing it safe. It was time to chase the dreams I'd set aside in favor of security. It was time to become the person my chosen family believed I could be. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new office, still hardly believing it was real. The nameplate on the door read, Maya Chen, Community Librarian, and every time I saw it, I felt a little thrill of joy mixed with disbelief. The community center had created the position specifically for me after I'd presented my proposal to the board. They'd been struggling with their small, disorganized library for years, and when I suggested developing it into a proper community resource with programming for children and adults, reading groups, and literacy classes, they jumped at the idea. It meant taking a significant pay cut from my insurance job, but Sarah had been right when she'd pointed out that I'd been living like a hermit for so long that I had more savings than I knew what to do with, and David had been right when he'd said that dreams deferred aren't dreams destroyed. Sometimes they're just dreams waiting for the right moment to bloom. Maya! Maya! Emma's voice rang out as she burst through the library door, still in her school uniform and practically vibrating with excitement. Guess what happened today? Tell me, I said, crouching down to her level as she launched into an animated story about winning the school spelling bee. These days, I was always her first stop after school, whether Sarah was working late or not. The library had become a second home for her, a place where she could do homework, read stories, and help me with my work. And the word was magnificent, she continued, and I was thinking about how you always say our library is magnificent, so I knew exactly how to spell it. That is magnificent? I agreed, hugging her tight. I'm so proud of you. Can I tell Mr. David? Is he here yet? He's in the back room, setting up for tonight's book club meeting. Emma scampered off to find David, leaving me smiling in her wake. David had officially joined my library team as a volunteer coordinator, organizing reading programs and helping with special events. He claimed retirement was boring, but I knew the truth. He'd found his purpose in creating connections between people, building community one story at a time. Sarah appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, looking flushed and excited. Did Emma tell you about the spelling bee? She asked. She did. Congratulations, proud mama. There's something else, Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. I got into the program. I blinked, processing her words. Sarah had been taking online classes for the past year, working toward her degree in social work. She'd applied to a specialized program that would let her finish her bachelor's degree while doing an internship at the community center. "Sarah! That's incredible!" I jumped up and hugged her, both of us laughing with joy. "When do you start?" "Fall semester." "And Maya, they want me to do my internship here, working with families and children. We'd be colleagues." The idea of working alongside Sarah every day, of building something meaningful together, felt like another small miracle in a life that had become full of them. "Does this mean we're going to see even more of each other?" I asked. "Are you okay with that? Because I know we've been spending a lot of time together lately, and if you need more space." I stopped her with a look. "Sarah Rodriguez, I never want space from you or Emma. You two are the best part of every day. Even when Emma practices her recorder at 7 in the morning. Especially then." We were interrupted by the sound of running feet and Emma's voice calling, "Mama! Mama! Come see what Mr. David and I are planning." Sarah and I followed the sound to the back room, where David and Emma were surrounded by poster board, markers, and what appeared to be architectural blueprints drawn in crayon. "We're designing the new children's reading garden," Emma announced. "Look, we're going to have butterfly bushes and a little pond with fish and benches shaped like mushrooms, and a storytelling circle with special acoustics." "Special acoustics?" I asked, trying not to laugh. Mr. David explained how sound works. Emma said seriously, "If we design the circle right, everyone will be able to hear the story perfectly, even if they whisper." David caught my eye and shrugged. The girl asked good questions. I had to give her good answers. The reading garden had been my latest proposal to the community center board. An outdoor space where we could hold story time and reading groups during good weather, where families could come to read together, where the community could gather for literary events under the stars. The board approved the funding yesterday. I told them, and Emma shrieked with delight. "Really? We're really going to build it? We're really going to build it? Construction starts next month." Emma threw her arms around my waist. "This is the best day ever." As we worked together to refine Emma's garden design, adding practical elements like proper lighting and wheelchair accessibility to her imaginative vision of butterfly houses and fairy tale grottos, I felt overwhelmed by gratitude. A year ago, I'd been processing insurance claims in a gray cubicle, going home to an empty apartment, convinced that solitude was the same as safety. Now I was surrounded by people I loved, doing work that mattered, building something beautiful that would serve our community for years to come. "Maya." David's voice broke through my reverie. "The evening book club members are starting to arrive." I looked at the clock and realized we'd been planning the garden for over an hour. The Thursday night book club was one of my favorite programs. A group of 15 regulars who met weekly to discuss everything from classic literature to contemporary fiction to poetry. Tonight we were discussing The House on Mango Street, and I'd been looking forward to the conversation all week. "Emma, homework time," Sarah said, gathering up the garden plans. "Can I do it out here? I promise I'll be quiet during the book club." "You can sit at the front desk," I compromised. "But if you get distracted by the discussion, you need to move to the back room." "Deal." The book club meeting was lively, with passionate discussion about identity, belonging, and the way places shape us. Mrs. Chen, no relation to David or me, but the coincidence had become a running joke, argued that home was something you created rather than something you found. Mr. Rodriguez, Sarah's neighbor, who'd started coming after she'd mentioned the group, insisted that home was wherever your people were. "What do you think, Maya?" asked Janet, one of the founding members. "You've become such a cornerstone of our community. Where do you feel most at home?" I looked around the room at these people who'd become so dear to me, then through the open doorway at Emma bent over her homework, and Sarah shelving returned books, and David helping a teenager find resources for a school project. "I think home is wherever you're allowed to be your most authentic self," I said finally. "Where people know your flaws and choose to love you anyway. Where you can contribute something meaningful and feel like you belong. And where is that for you?" Janet pressed gently. "Right here," I said without hesitation. "This community, this library, these people, this is home." After the book club ended and the community center had emptied except for our little family, we sat in the children's reading nook, Emma curled up between Sarah and me while David read aloud from The Secret Garden, the book I'd given Emma months ago, which had become our current bedtime story. And the secret garden bloomed and every morning revealed new miracles. David read, his warm voice filling the cozy space. "That's like us," Emma said sleepily. We're like a secret garden, but not secret anymore. What do you mean, sweetheart? Sarah asked, stroking Emma's hair. We started small and kind of hidden. Just Maya being lonely and me needing someone to wait with me. But then we grew and grew, and now look at us. We're beautiful and everyone can see how much we love each other. I met Sarah's eyes over Emma's head, both of us blinking back tears. The wisdom of children never failed to astound me. I think Emma should be a poet when she grows up, David said softly. Or a philosopher, I added, or both. Emma mumbled, fighting sleep. People can be lots of things. Later, after Sarah had carried a sleeping Emma home and David had headed to his own apartment, I walked through my library one last time before turning off the lights. I paused at each section. The children's area with its colorful bean bags and low shelves, the adult fiction section organized by genre and author, the research corner with computers and reference materials, the community bulletin board covered with announcements and thank you notes and photos from library events. In the center of it all was Emma's drawing from that first night at the ice cream parlor, now framed and mounted on the wall. 4 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, labeled, My Family. She'd added to it over the months, drawing in the library, the community center, even Abuela Maria in Phoenix who sent Emma letters and called every Sunday. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah. Thank you for everything. Not just today but every day. Emma and I are so lucky to have you. I texted back, I'm the lucky one. See you tomorrow. But as I locked up the library and walked to my car, I realized luck wasn't really the right word for what had happened to us. Luck implied random chance, accidental good fortune. What we had was intentional. It was the result of choosing courage over fear, connection over isolation, love over self-protection. It was the result of showing up for each other, again and again, through spelling bees and sick days and family crises, and career changes and grief and joy. We had built this family deliberately, carefully, with the same attention and nurturing that Emma wanted to give her butterfly garden. And like any garden, it required ongoing care. Daily watering with kindness, regular weeding of misunderstandings, seasonal adjustments for growth and change. But oh, how it bloomed. Driving home to my apartment, which no longer felt empty because it was just a place to sleep between the real moments of my life. I thought about Mrs. Patterson's letter, still tucked in my bedside drawer. She'd written that she hoped I would find the love and happiness I deserved. The beautiful truth was that I'd found something even better. I'd learned that love and happiness weren't things to be found or deserved. They were things to be created, shared, and tended. They were things that grew stronger when you gave them away. I'd spent so many years afraid that caring about people would make me vulnerable to pain. I'd been right about that. Loving Sarah and Emma and David did make me vulnerable. When Emma had been sick, I'd worried. When Sarah had struggled with school applications, I'd felt her stress. When David talked about missing his wife, I'd felt his sadness. But what I'd learned was that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the price of admission to a life worth living. The pain of loving was nothing compared to the pain of being alone. And the joy. Oh, the joy was everything. As I pulled into my parking space, I saw a figure sitting on the steps of my building. For a moment, my heart jumped with old anxiety, but then I recognized David's profile. Everything okay? I asked as I approached. He stood, smiling in the lamplight. Everything's perfect. I just wanted to give you this. He handed me an envelope, and I recognized his careful handwriting immediately. What is it? Open it when you get upstairs. But Maya, I want you to know how proud I am of you. Of the life you've built, the courage you've shown, the love you've learned to give and receive. My wife would have adored you. He hugged me goodnight, and I watched him walk to his car before going upstairs. In my apartment, I opened the envelope with curiosity. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. David and his wife standing in what looked like a community garden, both of them beaming at the camera. On the back, in his wife's handwriting, were the words, "Home is wherever love grows." And tucked behind the photograph was a note from David. Maya, when I lost my wife, I thought I'd lost my family forever. What you've taught me is that family isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose to create, every day, with intention and hope and an open heart. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for letting us choose you. You've given an old man a reason to wake up excited about each new day. With all my love, your chosen father. If you'll have me. I sat on my couch. The same couch where I'd once spent evenings in solitude, reading romance novels and believing that kind of love existed only in fiction, and cried happy tears. Then I picked up my phone and started a group text to my family. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for teaching me that love is not something you find, but something you build together. Thank you for showing me that the best families are the ones you create with intention, patience, and hope. I love you all more than words can express. See you tomorrow for another day of our beautiful, complicated, magnificent life together. The responses came quickly. Sarah, love you too. Can't wait to see what we build next. David, sweet dreams, dear daughter. Emma's typed on Sarah's phone. La vieille afpls oni. I fell asleep that night thinking about secret gardens and chosen families and the mysterious alchemy that transforms strangers into the people you can't imagine living without. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new opportunities to show up for each other. Emma would probably have another spelling bee to win. Sarah would juggle work and school. David would find new ways to bring people together through stories, and I would continue building a library that served not just as a repository of books, but as a gathering place for a community learning to care for one another. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I was younger, full of romantic dreams and traditional expectations. It was better, it was real, it was mine. And when I woke up the next morning to a text from Emma asking if we could plant actual butterflies in the reading garden, which would require a gentle lesson in biology, I smiled and got ready to face another day of being exactly where I belonged. Some stories end with people finding their happily ever after. This story ends with the understanding that happily ever after isn't a destination you reach. It's a choice you make, every day, to keep choosing love, keep building connection, keep tending the garden of family you've planted together. And in that choice, in that daily commitment to show up for each other, we found something better than a fairy tale ending. We found home.